You're live.
All right. Good afternoon, everyone. Welcome. Hope everyone's doing well. I'd like to start off this afternoon's work session. And agenda item number 1 will be the child care discussion. And I'll open up and turn it over to Tony.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor, Council. We recognize this is a critical subject matter. It, I think, ranks right up there with affordable housing as far as our ability to attract and retain people to live in this community, particularly families. And if you're going to achieve your 50% residential year-round goal, this is a critical piece of that equation. To that end, studying, and I appreciate the work that Diane had done and other staff members in the past, piggybacked off of that. And we talked to a lot of people in this industry, and it's a very cooperative community when it comes to fact finding and getting recommendations. To that end, what we found is that early childcare in both Frisco and Summit County is a challenging, fragmented, and expensive proposition for local families and employees. It's a problem nationally, but it's even more acute here. And the principal challenges, it almost sounds like a healthcare discussion, deal with capacity, accessibility, affordability, and retention. So there's a lot of similarities to industries. In Summit County, we have 26 licensed providers providing care for, right now, there's 611 licensed slots. It doesn't necessarily mean they're all filled, because as we discussed further, some of these facilities don't have teachers to meet the licensing requirements. So there's actually less slots actually being filled. But there's almost over 1,400 children under the age of 5 in this county. So a lot of youth. Frisco, we have about 86 slots with 3 providers. We have the preschool around the corner here. We also have 2 home care facilities, which, at least in my day, that was the predominant delivery mechanism. Now it's a more institutionalized, a bigger operation. So at the end of the day, there's theoretically 1 slot for every 2.5 kids under the age of 5. So that represents a problem. And cost is a big issue. It's very expensive. The average daily cost in Summit County is $74. If you were to send your kiddos, a toddler would be about $1,634 for a 5-day program. And if they're in preschool, less, $1,468. That represents, if for someone sending 2 children, which is not uncommon to the Summit County preschool, $3,100, or an annual cost of $37,224. That is the equivalent of having sent 3 kids to college tuition. And these kids are 3, 4, and 5. So I don't know how people come up with the money. If we look at just 100 AMI in Frisco, it's $96,000 a year. They are consuming 39% of the gross income just from childcare. Forget mortgages, forget healthcare, forget the cars. Childcare is a huge bite out of the apple. Now, for the federal government, this is Department of Health and Human Services. They recommend that childcare should not exceed 7% of a family's gross income. So clearly we're failing badly in that category. Breckenridge, which has a fabulous program, their means test is between 13 and 16%. Still too high, but certainly a lot better than 37%. Also an issue locally, just as we find out with other businesses, but more acute in the childcare business, low wages, not just locally here, average between $15 and $21. Breckenridge tends to pay on the higher end. Locally here, more in the $16 to $19 cost. Clearly, you imagine trying to find a home here or even rent a home here with those kind of wages, virtually impossible. And then there's also healthcare costs. So it's a very difficult situation. Again, nationally, childcare workers rank in the bottom 2% as income earners. I think is a tragedy, when that's our most important, quote, asset is our children, and we're paying people at the bottom 2%. Some solutions, there's some very creative solutions out there. We looked around in the mountain area, for example, employee-based childcare, or what we call sponsored slots. Winter Park Resort's doing it very successfully, and when they have excess capacity, let other people use their slots. Snowmass, Sun Up and Vale, a very progressive ownership group there that secures slots for their employees. Then there's employer-based subsidies or discounts. Vail Health has done a really nice job. Breckenridge has done an outstanding job. Also providing childcare space at nominal cost. Town of Vail probably is the leader here. They have 2 childcare spaces in Vail. In addition, they have an 80 slot space for infants in the Miller Ranch development. So they've been very progressive when it comes to securing slots for kids. Locally, Summit County and the town of Silverthorne are embarking on a partnership, about a 6,000 square foot facility in Silverthorne, but they're running head first right now into cost. I talked to Scott and last Thursday, and now the cost is up to $800 a square foot. There are a lot of demands under licensing, bathroom requirements in every room and partitioning, and so a lot of unique demands placed on this space, but still, they're not building a mansion, they're just building a childcare facility. That one's up to 4.8 million. They're delaying right now. They're trying to do some, value engineering to get those costs down. But I think just like in housing, that is just reality. It's going to be expensive to build new facilities. Breckenridge has 4, and they're looking at a 5th one at Farmers Corner. Even though technically it's not in the town of Breckenridge, it's certainly going to serve their residents and their employees. Teacher assistance has been popular. Aspen passed back in 1990. They were probably the leaders in this industry. Of 0.45% sales tax generates, because it's Aspen, a tremendous amount of money, millions. So they have a very extensive program. I think they have a staff of 8 people at the town, just focusing on childcare. That's not providing childcare, that's administering various childcare programs for residents and employees. So they're very progressive. Breckenridge has set aside up to now $150,000 annually for teacher assistants. Again, that's one of the reasons their wages are slightly higher. Still not probably where anyone would be satisfied, but roughly in the $20, $21 range. And Summit County, of course, has the pre-kindergarten program that provides teacher assistants. I think it was 115,000 they just contributed to the Summit Preschool to get their wages up to an average of, this is including teachers and other related staff, up to $16.61. So it's just all assigned today. One of our local large box businesses was advertising positions between $17 and $23. This retail establishment, no education really required. Tuition assistance is quite popular to, again, lower the cost burden on families. And I think Breckenridge has an outstanding program in that regard. They're contributing $650,000 a year to that program. Most of it's coming from marijuana tax revenues from their general fund that they dedicate to childcare. And average grant is about $6,000 per family. It's a fairly comprehensive process you have to go through. It's not as simple as just handing out grants. They do income tax checks. They have to check whether you've recently got a bonus and how that impacts you and how many kids you have in the program. There's a lot of administration to these programs. Capacity expansion. One of the opportunities, again, given the cost of building facilities, it's almost cost prohibitive now, given the Silverthorne Summit County example, is more people are looking at existing spaces and maybe repurposing them for childcare purposes. We may have a couple of candidates, and I don't want to name them out, but they might be out there with some investment. Did talk to Summit Preschool. They effectively can create satellite operations and get up and run much quicker than someone just coming in trying to get licensed. So that would be a big advantage if you're interested in that, because clearly capacity has to be part of the solution. Just maintaining the status quo was not getting us ahead. It's just kind of keeping us on the treadmill. And then again, we don't want to overemphasize this because the bill hasn't passed, but Nancy Pelosi has promised it will pass by November 15th, and I would not argue with her. And that bill represents the single largest investment in childcare in the history of probably the world, it's not America. $450 billion, guaranteed universal free childcare for all 3 and 4-year-olds in the country. That's mind-boggling. In addition, an extension of tax credits, though most people in this community probably wouldn't qualify. It's usually families under 60 to 65,000 annually. But more importantly, and I don't know how they're going to achieve this, put a cap on the maximum expenditures per family at 7%. That will be a huge plus for families. I just don't know what the mechanics are to achieve that. But that's in the details of a 1,400-page bill. But we'll be looking at that. So at the end of the day, you know, we're in a system that's plagued by a lack of slots for kids, inadequate compensation and benefits and housing for their staff, and a tremendously high financial burden on parents. And again, given the interrelationship between capacity, affordability, and access, you know, I think all three really have to be affirmatively addressed if you're really going to make a mark in this area. So I had laid out for you some policy options, and our intent, similar to when we addressed the housing issue back on December 14th, is give you a litany of choices and give us some direction tonight, and then we can come back with more details and fine tune some of these options. But first option is effectively do nothing. You have 265,000 you earmarked in this year's fiscal year 2022 budget. Let it sit there. Second option, you could supplement that 265 with reserves from the nicotine tax. They're roughly $500,000. In the future, we've talked to the county and the other towns. We kind of already made a commitment in this fiscal year for there's two parts, part one, part two. Part one is for nicotine education. Part two is more the mental health services. So part one, you could divert those funds, talking with our city attorney, for the purpose of childcare. The language is broad enough that you could earmark those funds for childcare. That'd be roughly $300,000 a year. It's a really significant constant revenue stream for childcare. Options, teacher assistants. This is what it would cost. You know, roughly $60,000 for every dollar increase in wages. The only downside to this, and I think it's a legitimate argument, you're effectively subsidizing a business directly. So, I mean, where do you draw the line? And there's many businesses here hurting for employees and needing to increase their wages. Why would it stop just at a child care facility? Why not everyone else? So it's a slippery slope. And I know, talking to the Breckenridge officials, I think that's one area that gives them consternation. And I don't know in the future whether they'll continue to do that, because I think they feel some heartburn over that precedent. So just food for thought. But you can see, to really get hourly wages where they're what I would call decent, reasonable, I think you're looking at $4 an hour. That's 220,000, not just this year, every year, and that's compounded. So that's a huge investment going forward. Housing assistance, you know, we have those 17 units, of which some of them are earmarked for people in the 10-mile basin. I think we have one preschool teacher in one of the units. I mean, you could just designate all four for, hey, this is a priority. They're all going to go to preschool teachers. That's an option available to you. Probably considering a tuition assistance program like Breckenridge, and they have a great model to play off of. They've even offered to administer that program. It costs roughly $7,500 a year to do that. And looking at the numbers, we have 29 families at the Summit Preschool. We don't really know how many are on a wait list. If I had to guess, I would think we're somewhere in the neighborhood of 40 to 50 families. It's pure conjecture, but if you would assume that, then you're looking at, again, using the metric from Breckenridge of roughly $6,000 per family, you're looking between $240,000 to $300,000 a year to enter a tuition assistance program similar to Breckenridge's. Also, to make the determination, Breckenridge supports families and employees of Breckenridge, but they must go to one of their 4 existing facilities and the 5th one that will be coming online. They can't take their money and apply it to Summit Preschool. So one of the directions you have to give is, would you want to constrain the program to just facilities in Frisco? Because right now there's really not much capacity, so that'd be spinning our wheels. Or really open up, if there's a facility in Summit County, it's eligible for an assistant package to a family. I mean, we would recommend that. It would also begin to set the precedent. This issue is not a local issue. This issue is not going to stop at political boundaries. This is a county issue as well as state and national, but certainly a county issue. And so we've talked to Breckenridge about that. We have to recognize they have a big advantage, having potentially 5 facilities. That's a great marketing tool if you're recruiting employees, to say, hey, we've got this capacity for you. I don't think right now, hopefully their minds might change right now, they would be too enamored with a countywide system, which they would just fold into. Because right now they have a huge competitive advantage over the rest of us. But things change. And then again, we brought it up on Thursday with the mayor and managers group. I know I've talked to the other managers. They certainly from Silverthorne, from Dillon, from the county, they're quite interested in a more county-wide universal system that's seamless. If you live in Summit County, here's the program, here are the benefits. It doesn't matter where you live in Summit County, and that would be the ideal situation. But we're clearly not around the corner from that. Once you make your determination, give us direction on these different options, like I expressed earlier, we'll kind of flesh them out more extensively and then bring you back more detailed information. And in addition, we'll see with the proposed passage of the Build Back Better Act, we'll see how that's going to impact us, because that could have an enormous impact, but I'm not sure when that's going to take place. I would seriously doubt we would see the impact in the next fiscal year. It's got to take at least a year to draft the regulatory language and figure out how all that money is going to be dispensed. But certainly long term, that's a big plus for us if it happens. Any questions?
Did you take a breath?
Yeah.
Any questions before me? I've got one, Tony, on the salary chart you have. I probably won't be able to find it again, even though it's on here. What were you basing those numbers off of for, like, if we were to do a
So the per hour.
Bottom, the one.
yeah, that was like, so how many people are we talking about in that? And is that looking at like increasing the amount of teachers within the Frisco district, or is that just the ones they already have in existence?
Existence.
Okay,
So that
so-
would be the staff currently at the preschool plus the 2
And-
home based.
Okay,
Because I think, to be honest, I think historically those type of facilities have been discriminated against. They should be treated, they're licensed, they serve a need, they're smaller, but that used to be the bread and butter of the industry. I think with the cost of housing, I was talking to them, I think at one time they had 43, they're down to 19, and it's going to be an endangered species, unfortunately, but that was the backbone of the industry 20, 30 years ago, and that's changing radically, but they certainly should be supported at the same level if you're interested in teacher assistants as some preschool, more institutional facility. Yeah, that's the average it would cost for every dollar that their wages went up.
So Tony,
Yeah.
I'm curious on the, in doing the research for this, with the families qualifying for the Summit County Strong Futures Initiative, which is essentially a family of 4 under 200,000. If the average mean income within Summit County is 80,000 for that demographic, how are there not more than 5 families participating in that program at that school?
I'll have to ask them.
yeah,
Yeah.
I'm struggling with
Yeah.
that.
The problem with most of the government-related programs, they're mean tested. Typically, you have to be under 73% AMI. There's not a ton of folks that are going to qualify there, so that's one of the problems. Our cost of living here is so out of line with the rest of the country. I'm hoping, again, in this federal legislation, there's language in there that would accommodate and recognize situations like us where, though 60, 70,000 may seem like a lot of money, which it is nationally, it's virtually poverty level in Summit County. And so, again, we'll have to look at the details of legislation, see whether our type of situations are properly recognized, but it's just going to be if it's a national means test, we're not going to benefit much.
So that
But get the
information struck me as interesting.
Yeah.
And then, I want to come over, Andy, I'd be curious what the Summit Foundation has in place in that, in partnering instead of reinventing. We've been down the create a program and then have to backfill the staff to get there. I don't think any of us want to go there again. So who can we partner with? I didn't see a lot on the Summit Foundation in here, so I'd like to hear a little bit more about that. But the other component is, I mean, the Breckenridge one looks like a really nice program, and perhaps that could be, I mean, for $77,500, they would administer this program for us. An FTE is, as we all know, significantly higher than that. So with all of that, if a program were to come to fruition, my final thought is, where does it stop? We're not, I don't know that we have enough funding to meet the need. So I'm curious about that. And I don't know, I mean, how does Breckenridge say, we're done? Is the application process closed? Do they have a maximum number of participants? Those sort of things.
Yeah. Well, you could start and work backwards with how much you're willing to invest. I mean, right now, you're putting aside 265,000. So you can say, okay, we'll be prepared to do that on an annual basis with inflation. And you got 300,000 you can dip into long term. So roughly, $565,000, $600,000 a year, that's going to move the needle. I mean, without any kind of additional, sales tax increase like Aspen did, that would be significant. But we also need to find partners in the private sector, with federal government, with preferably Summit County and our other towns, so that we collectively move together. Because if we do this individually, we're never going to get ahead of the game.
And when you were talking about, thanks for mentioning the nicotine funding, right? We've had some history with that funding mechanism in the past, and I'm curious, with the part one and part two, are those currently the asks from the county of our level of participation within those programs, and that's allocated over here? And then there's other funding in that we set aside for our in-house programs, or is that a mixed pot?
The county really conducts the nicotine education and addiction programs.
And to cut to the
effectively
chase, that's the
contract them.
social services that's provided by the county, not the town of Frisco. That's what I'm getting at.
Yeah, but we directly support that. We turn around, they send us a check for the nicotine funding. We turn around and write a check right back for the administration and the execution of that program. That's roughly $300,000 a year. And the roughly over 200,000 goes to what I mentioned were more community mental health initiatives. And I didn't think you wanted to touch that.
Clarify for me, how the town of Breckenridge actually funds their tuition assistance. So I had previously thought it was a tax. But it says, so it's a marijuana sales tax?
Yes.
Is that it? There's not a specific childcare tax?
No. Just marijuana, and then that's the 650,000 they get from that. And then they supplement with another 150,000 from the general fund, which, that just is a mere rate of other revenue sources going to the general fund. But so they're collectively investing 800,000 a year without a dedicated tax like Aspen or anything like our 5A tax for housing.
They've been talking recently about it because their marijuana retail has been up and down. So the 650 might not have the longevity, but the childcare tax, they didn't ever put that on the ballot.
Melissa, I was misunderstood that when Tarn was going to school over there.
Yeah.
I thought
Yeah.
we weren't eligible because we were out of town, but I'm with you. Like, where did that go? Or was I completely misunderstood of that?
Well, because I know that we that has come up in our discussions in the past. I'm wondering why is that not something for us to consider?
Can you slide your computer just over scopes, maybe see your microphone, just in case?
A specific tax dedicated to childcare?
Good. And I've talked to Leslie about that. That's probably the safest thing to do, saying, hey, we're going to dedicate, just like Breckenridge, our marijuana, that's roughly $500,000 a year right there. Our marijuana sales tax is gonna be for childcare, period.
What are we spending that on right at this moment?
It's part of the general fund, so it's fluid. It's
Right.
not earmarked for anything.
But those conversations that
Yeah.
we've been having is
Yeah.
trying to allocate specific funding sources
Yeah.
to programs. Marijuana tax has come up at least for 2 separate projects or initiatives. Like, one of them at one point was for childcare, but if I think we keep going back to a couple of different funding mechanisms and wanting to put them in a lot of different places. At least that's how it feels from my seat.
So a valid source of concern, though, is the recent vote on November 2nd was state of Colorado rejected, to a lot of people's surprise, an increase to the marijuana tax for after-school programs for kids. So it was a strong message that, hey, leave my weed alone, and I really don't care that much about after-school programs because it went down across the state. And I think that surprised a lot of people. So there is a tolerance there that was exceeded.
There was also politics in that question as well. It wasn't just, do you want to spend money on after school? There was a lot more to that question than just that. So Rick, to your question,
Please.
Summit Foundation is not a service provider of childcare. There is a line item. We usually support about $250,000 a year towards the county's childcare topic. There was a panel discussion last week, 2 weeks ago, and the whole takeaway is collaboration. You know, all the jurisdictions within the county are all seemingly aligned in the fact that we shouldn't be going at this alone. So, you know, my view, well, really is in the collaborative mode. Breckenridge we've got 2 issues to address. One is we've put $265,000 in the budget for next year. What are we gonna do with that money? And the other is kind of the long term. We're not going to create capacity. We're not going to build a building. We're not going to do that immediately. So that's sort of the capacity question is separate from the how are we going to help our Frisco families, whether they live here or work here, be able to afford childcare. You know, unfortunately, a lot of them can or can't afford it, but it doesn't matter because they can't find a seat in the room anyway. And that's a challenge. But just want to lay out, I think the BREC offer is so generous, not from an economic standpoint, from an administrative standpoint, and it represents everything we want to be doing, which is collaborating, bringing this into a county system, and it will hopefully evolve. So from the short, what do we do with our next year's budget? I would love to direct my direction. My hope is we direct staff to work closely with Breckenridge to utilize our funds to create a program which they already have and seems to be, I'm not in the pickup line for kids anymore, but it seems to be a very well-regarded program. People that are in it like it. So let's take advantage of what they're willing to do for us, with us, and do that. Direction account, I do not think we as Frisco government should be running a childcare facility. So in the world of when we have conversations about expanding capacity, I love taking money and making it available to in-home childcare because, I mean, we're talking $1,600 to $2,000 a month. Somebody has 1 child and they take care of 3 others. They've just brought in $6,000 a month. That's real money. And I think if our role as government is to make it so that our childcare businesses get more full pay students, that will offer them the opportunity to make their wages market rate. You know, gas prices are going to double. Well, what are they going to do now? You know, they've got it. They can't make the room 63 degrees. They've got the typical business challenges. But if we give them, if we give our families the opportunity to be full pay customers to our childcare facilities, that solves both problems. It will be up to the childcare facilities to set their prices at a rate that allows them to pay their staff and run their business the way it should be run. So that's where the whole, I don't know if it's technically called a voucher program. But that's where I really like to be. And so, that would be my hope, that we direct staff to work with Breck and create a voucher program, because what these places need is more full-pay students. Hopefully that clears the foundation part too.
Like, because
It's been a big topic in my life for the last couple of weeks, and I keep hearing similar things, which is really nice. It's not a combative environment within the community right now. Kevin McDonald, councilman from Silverthorne, had the best analogy, which he said, we live in our issues for our families is a three-legged stool. It's housing, it's healthcare, and it's child. And right now we have, as a community, addressed healthcare and housing. They're having their day. Now's the day for childcare, and everybody's on it and everybody's motivated. So it's a good time to move on it.
I think because Andrew went there, and that's good. It's taken a good direction on the conversation. Let's jump into the tuition assistance and see how everybody else feels on that bullet point. Go for it, Andy.
Yeah, if I could, thanks. So we have budgeted the 265. We have already set aside 68 for the Summit County preschool. Is that what it is?
I mean, it's up to the council.
So at our last discussion, we were talking about not defunding the amount that we have paid them in the past, but not giving them more, right? So that's coming off the top of that the 265 in the first place, right? So the nicotine tax, sure, it sounds interesting, but like, are we robbing Peter to pay Paul? Does that money just sit there? And if it's part of the general fund and, we have the excess, then maybe we consider it does just sit there. But, I think this would be a reasonable area to plug that in. So then if we're working in, 450 or 1,000 or so, I think it's a slippery slope to do wage assistance for these individual businesses. They absolutely need to get paid more, but I don't think it's up to us to pay them more. I think it's up to their employers to figure out how to pay them more, and they should. Otherwise, they're all going to be part of the Great Resignation, and then we'll have nobody. So I have a tough time with that. The tuition assistance, for sure. I think that's a big win where we can actually put money right back into the hands of parents. And it would expand, I think, beyond going to preschool in Frisco because we don't have the capacity. I think that would be okay to get the assistance and go take it to another facility. But that's up to them. That's how I would say for that personally. I wouldn't be opposed to the potential of something like the SOS building, the old community center. Is that a real thing where Summit County Preschool can just extend and hire people from who knows where in the ether and, and support how many other kids? 10, 20 out of that building? Would that move the needle? And what would we need to do to that building in order to, bring it up to speed for a child care facility? What kind of money would have to go into that? I don't know if it's worth spending it on that particular building for this thing, but if this is gonna, create numbers, otherwise we're not creating any new capacity. I think the discussion, if we actually went down the road with Peak School and they did the adventure center, if they got that far down the road and if the voters voted for it and everything else, we could ideally build some pre-K facility there as well. But otherwise, we've got no extra capacity anywhere, and I don't see how that's going to change. I really wish that the Summit County Preschool had their ducks in a row to say, this is where we're getting our future funding, and it's not just raising tuition. We need them to operate, in the black. We need them to operate where they can pay their people and they can support their building and they can support their business. And because that's not our job in this particular case. I think that's about it.
Andy, how do you feel about the offer from Breckenridge to have them administer it? Are you good with?
Yeah, I think instead of recreating the wheel, I think that's not a bad idea. If the 75,000, which is coming out of this 450.
7,500.
Oh, 7,500. I
Yeah.
thought this was per year for okay. Well, that's sure.
No cost
That's
is, that's what they're offering us.
right. That doesn't sound remotely even possible, but if
Nope.
if it is, then great, and maybe we get to do it all together. But I don't know if that's realistic. But that gets us off the ground without us recreating the wheel and putting more time and effort on staff, where once again we're not subtracting and we're just adding. So that's where I stand there. Thank you.
And Leslie, coming from Breckenridge, we work really closely with those people there. And we have other staff members who work closely with them. So I think it would be a fairly smooth operation, but I can't promise you that fixed price will last us very long. Once they realize there's probably more work there than they anticipate. But
Others,
we're taking advantage of it.
tuition assistance, how do you guys feel?
I am a strong supporter of that one.
Yeah.
Hands down, of all of our options and items that we've talked about over the years, that stands heads above the rest to me, putting the money in the pockets of families so that they can pay their own bills and make it work for them, and for all the reasons that we've all talked about sort of endlessly at this point in many of these meetings. So absolutely yes on that. I think I don't know how exactly that would be administered. Obviously that's up to you guys to figure out, but I really love the collaborative approach to this. It's something that even we're talking about when we're talking about the trash management in our county. We're talking about collaboration on housing. We need to collaborate and not necessarily look for competitive advantages over one another. And so I love the idea of the flow of resources, especially between Frisco and Breckenridge. They've got great childcare centers, as you pointed out, numerous. The one thing, so let me just keep my train of thought here. So definitely let's go for that. Long term, I think, maybe it needs to move here. I don't want to be in the business of childcare. I don't think we have the resources, as the others have pointed out. Before we ever went down the road of, I just don't think, I think we're years away from anything of the sort, like expanding other facilities. But I'd love to encourage, my kids went to Summit County Preschool and they went to Jenny Vin, I can't pronounce her last name. But she was in-house, and they also went to the preschool at the elementary school, and just having those options is hugely important. How do we get more people to have childcare in their homes, smaller, options for people that only need it a couple days a week, like aren't the 5-day-a-week families? I mean, there's a lot of people like that as well. So, perhaps there's a way that we can incentivize private solutions to emerge in our community and not rely so much on the one. And I love this. I love the direction that we're going, because, I think the direction we were going was relying so heavily on just this one option, and I think broadening that is really smart. So one thing that I did not see come up is, I believe Breckenridge, I'm not exactly sure how they do it, maybe you would, or Leslie, but with new development, new neighborhoods in Silverthorne, the new childcare facility. How was that? How exactly did that come to be? And so we don't have large developments besides the Hill coming forth, and childcare absolutely needs to be part of the development concept for Lake Hill, hands down, but let's leave that aside for now. But when we have development come online, we don't have large neighborhoods. We can't put a new childcare center in every new development, but we could do a fee in lieu or some sort of, I mean, I don't know, but I think that every new development helping pay for this issue so that we can have new facilities run by private entities would be something for us to look into. And then the last thing, I'm not in favor of us providing housing specifically for childcare. We cannot choose between a teacher or a childcare worker or a health. I mean, that's not, in my opinion, up to us. I'm not in favor of the pay assistance for all the reasons the others stated. And then the last thing I would say is I am interested in increasing this funding. And so while federal funding sounds great, as you pointed out, it's years away. It's very uncertain. Do we administer it? Do the child care centers get it directly? Does it go through the county? There's so many unknowns. And I still would like us to consider finding a dedicated revenue for childcare in the town of Frisco. Even if it's just pennies, I think increasing that 260 to 500 or more, we can really start doing something meaningful for our families. So I think that's it.
I'll jump in. Yeah, sure. No, I honestly don't have a ton to add. I think we're all, it sounds like so far at least, we're all fairly well aligned in terms of our mission here. And for me, it's kind of starting, out there and working our way back in. And the mission should be to provide low or no cost childcare, early childcare, SPK care, if you will, to any Frisco family that wants it, period. We start there and work back through what's existing and trying to identify the collaborative process that exists. But I think we can get there in terms of funding pretty quickly. I'm not too hung up right now in the next year or two, on the linkage between identifying that revenue stream that is going to support the whatever child care program we come up with. I know, and we all know this, over the last 10 years, our annual sales tax collection has increased a couple percent every year. That money's materialized every year in the budget, in the general fund, every year for the last 10 years, just through sales tax growth and, the growth of our local economy. So I'm not worried about finding it. That money's accruing to the general fund. And as it does, I don't think that we necessarily have to say, oh, we need to go find new money to do this. I mean, we have the money in the general fund to do this. And we could do it out of the general fund just by creating the program and funding it without having to create a new tax. Now, that being said, I like some of the ideas I'm hearing. I think we have to be careful about levying impact fees on everything that's coming down the pike, because these are going to start to serve a lot of different masters. So I like the idea of working with what we have, because right now we're very fortunate. We have plenty. So now I think this kind of goes to one of those value-driven conversations that in the last year or two, we've kind of gotten away from. COVID drove us in one direction because we didn't have them, because it simplified the conversation. And honestly, in the last year, when you look at a $12 million capital budget and the amount of money in the general fund, kind of hard to get in the weeds on $40 and $50 and $80,000, But I think it's good practice. It's a good habit to be in. But I think we can go ahead and fund this without getting in the weeds about how. That can certainly manifest itself pretty quickly, I think, over the next year or two, as we either go through a sales tax appeal, or we try and do a sales tax thing, or increase taxes, or we
poach, we retask money from the nicotine fund or retask money from the library, wherever. I mean, there's a number of places to do it. But without a doubt, I'm in support of everything that I've heard. In terms of teacher assistants, I think about how schools make it, from pre-K through secondary education, post-secondary and on. And, there's, we're able to go get money for, kindergarten through 12th grade. Colleges generally have other funding mechanisms. They get endowments, they get, preschool gets none of that. They don't have alumni. You come back and go, it's such a great time when I was 4. Here's $1 million. So, I really have no problem creating an endowment for the school in our backyard, I really like the idea of startup grants for private in-home to really kind of maybe catalyze some in-home daycare for qualified in-home daycare, a little bit of criteria development. I think we can have grants to get people up over that hurdle, to get their homes inspected, to get them licensed, to get their insurance, get them out of the ground. I think it's a great idea. So I think there's ways we can increase capacity. To Andrew's point, I don't think we need to, I think we can identify where we would be willing to facilitate, operations like this. I think if we ensure a continuing, a commitment to a dedicated revenue stream to exactly do it, Andrew Aronson has said, which is make sure we can always bridge the gap between the increasing tuition and families' means. We're gonna help create that market that will drive the interest in realizing that new capacity. So in theory, it should to some degree take care of itself, so in the short term, that doesn't solve all the problems, but making sure that spread countywide so people can go where the spots are is really, really important. So if I give somebody money, they need to be able to go wherever it makes sense for them to do it. So the countywide collaboration, having Breckenridge in a position to help administer this is a great leap forward, I think, for us, and allows us to put that money somewhere else where it's very beneficial for somebody. So I think I'm all aboard on just about everything that I heard. And Melissa made some great points, and I'm generally aligned with so I say green light. Green light.
It's like seems like tuition assistance is the got good support. Is there any, Jesse or Rick, anything you want to add on the tuition assistance?
I would just
Yeah.
support the broader tuition to any childcare facility that you could get into. I would also, that what wasn't mentioned, but the Breckenridge program is in the entire Upper Blue for people who live and work. And so I would like to see us move a little bit beyond the Frisco borders for the same reason that we run into trouble with people who want to buy a house in Frisco, but they work at the middle school, right? Like we have that conundrum. So I think right out of the gate, we could do better here. And so I would perhaps open it up to the 10-mile planning basin or some geographic area around Frisco, if that's possible. And the people that don't live and work directly in Breckenridge, I believe, receive a slightly lower tuition assistance for that difference. And I also would support, increasing that amount should we have the need. I think right now we don't really know what the true need is, because we've only been looking at open and available spots and wait lists for Summit County preschool. And that need is clearly broader than just that. I love the idea of startup grants for in-home daycare. That's a great idea. And I don't know how many people are out there saying, I would do this if only, but maybe we start that kind of investigation too. And I had one other thought, but now I forget it. So maybe come back to me in a second.
Rick, anything to add that hasn't been where you're
Just tuition assistance. If we can get to partner with Breckenridge, that's great, but I'm sensitive to the larger conversation of how does it become county if Breckenridge has their program. I don't, on a longer term, short and medium term, I think this program, once it gets going, is great, but I want to at least look for those opportunities for that county, Silverthorne, Dillon, everyone doing this together. But that's a manager meeting conversation perhaps, or something like that. So.
Just my other thought is, we've talked a lot about collaboration and partnerships with local governments and our regional government partners, but ski areas, the businesses, like these folks are in it too, and they need their workers. And so, what other approach and opportunity do we have to, Tony, in your memo, you mentioned the large employers in Vail and stuff that have creative solutions. Like, how can we get those employers on board with our program and our collaboration instead of having them kind of go off and do their own thing? So I would just add that, our large employers specifically and business at large might have a role to play here too.
I just, to speak, they are at the table. They're included, they're participating. The 250,000 that comes from the Summit Foundation is in a lot of ways, thank you to our ski area's generosity. So I agree 100%, but I don't want it to be viewed as we don't need to bring them into the table. They're already there.
Right.
How to engage them at a higher level is what we're all talking about.
Right.
So it's good.
This is maybe a great opportunity with Vail Health, putting a footprint down in Dillon. That's a positive. Certainly will approach them in the town of Dillon, and hopefully that will spur their competitor to step up, because I totally agree. This has to be a public-private solution. It can't just be burdened by government.
So to run through, I think teacher assistants didn't get any support from their, or the housing assistants. I'm with everything that's been said on the tuition assistance. Definitely, I'm not worried. I think we find the money one way or another. I'm good using nicotine tax to the fullest extent we need to fund whatever gaps show up. I think it's a great place. I think someone said it, but be cautious that if that is a successful program, those should be diminishing funds over the years. I'd be hesitant to earmark it that way. I think it's better the way it's kind of landing right now, for sure. And I like the grant idea. I'd also just be curious, maybe after we see what the demands are within town, looking at, would it be easier to just do a flat grant to every Frisco family or everybody who works in Frisco to cut down on some of the administrative side? And yeah, some people who make millions might get it, and some people who really need it are also going to get it. And that's just part of dedicating our town to keeping the kids healthy and happy and safe. So I'd be curious to see that once we know better numbers. I think we need a little more information first. And then, I think discussing future funding streams would be worth figuring out for sure once we get up and running.
Can I just add one more thing?
Absolutely.
That I really appreciate this, because it has been burdening my life for the last couple of weeks at ways I never expected. And the sense of desire by us as Frisco to be collaborative like the other groups want is a really big step that hasn't been going on, and it's happening now, and it's a good thing. So again, thank you.
And I also think if a bunch of bigger businesses wanted to come in and use one of our town facilities to start their own daycare, I'd be happy to let them use that property, 0 fee lease to get something else set up and running. Again, any place we can get 20 more kids.
We know there's demand, and now we're heading towards a guaranteed revenue source. As Dan said, we're moving, that's what moves the market.
Good. Any other questions on any of that? Tony, pretty clear.
Appreciate all the
Feels clear.
feedback. I think there's common themes, and we have a framework here that we can put together and hopefully bring back to you on the 30th to kind of narrow the scope here and give you a little more detail, and hopefully get something underway by the beginning of the new year. Time's of the essence.
Stocking stuffer for everybody. Awesome. Thank you. And good. There was a lot in that memo, and I appreciate that. That was helpful for the conversation and get us to where we are. So thank you for all who worked on that. Next item in our work session, not too bad on time, is the arts and culture discussion. Hello, Vanessa. How are you?
I am good. Thank you, Mayor and Council, for entertaining this discussion. All right. Brett is my friend. Yes, if you could pull up some pretty images, that would be great. So let's take a little walk down memory lane, which is going to see, it's the before times that we're going to reach back to. And that is in 2019, town council budgeted $25,000 for 2020 for public art. And that was obviously an interesting time to start a public art program. That group that was interested in public art with the leadership of Councilmember Sherburne and also then town manager Nancy Carey started meeting in October of 2019. It was a group of makers. It was hat maker, it was visual artists, it was coffee artisans, it was photographers, a luthier, like it was a really interesting group. And it showed us that there was a lot of passion and a lot of interest in having a deeper discussion that was town supported around art. And that group started meeting in October 2019, hit the ground running, and in February of 2020 did their first art installation with the help of not then, Councilmember Held. And they hauled around blocks of ice and they made ice sculptures in their yards, and they ended up being a part of Eat, Ski, and Be Merry, which is this great event from the Frisco Nordic Club. And it ended up being something that stuck around through March because they created a living room out of large blocks of ice. They also did something at the intersection of 3rd and Main as well. That is Todd Powell sitting in the living room in March 2020. It was, of course, one of the last events that we ended up having in 2020. And it was lovely and really well received. And that group said that they really found themselves talking about 3 things. And then Councilmember Sherburne really led a presentation around public art in January of 2020 and talked about those 3 things, 3 goals that group had come up with. One was finding a great space to make and exhibit art. The other one was doing community art, pieces like this. And the last one was really solidifying that there would and should be a community art group. That ended up being Make Frisco. Things got a little derailed, of course, with 2020. We still kept doing stuff. The stuff just changed a little bit. There's a Hope Heart installation, and also Shannon Galpin on the right side there did an installation of different messages on town sidewalks. She did them across the community. She also did some collages that were word art, and the Make Frisco group funded that effort. And it was, of course, in direct response to the pandemic. July 2020, council decided that they wanted to make sure that art reflected a moment in history, an important cultural moment. And so that budget of $25,000 also helped to fund the Black Lives Matter mural. Obviously, very interesting collaboration from some Make Frisco artists, but also from artists from different parts of Colorado and different parts of Summit County as well. That brings us to July 2021. And this lovely commissioned mural at the intersection of 3rd and Main Street. And this is Make Frisco taking, I think, a slightly different turn, commissioning a piece and having some really exceptional input into what that piece should look like. It was really a way different design. And it was really just viewable from one direction. And because of that group and the input that they gave around choosing this particular set of artists, we ended up getting a piece that was really very different, very interesting, interactive with the public. And I've seen more Instagram shots of this particular intersection And it's really ended up being a lovely piece, and it was an incredible process. And that Make Frisco group was a part of that commissioning. Then we found ourselves with some smaller community projects. One was a sailboat, which no longer has a home or owners and is no longer waterworthy. And we had a local artist actually do an outline, and then the kids painted it. Varying levels of success. It rained. The artist had to come back and fill in some of the pieces. Still an interesting community art project though. And then very successful were the pieces of art on the plastic barricades throughout the promenade. Very clearly heard direction from the community and from town council that we wanted to incorporate more art into the promenade. And as an aside, we had a local artist, Rich Seeley, great photographer. He was looking for his piece. We had these printed down in Denver with a printer we know really well who does really high quality prints. And he was looking for his when we took the promenade down, and we couldn't find it. And somebody gave us a little clue in that on the night before the promenade was taken down, there was, I would say like an unofficial art exchange, mostly exchanged to other people into their garages from these barricades. Because people, I think it speaks to the loveliness of those pieces and how much people valued them and valued seeing that art. And it made me feel good because I wondered how much people noticed it, but obviously they did. I'm not encouraging theft, but it did show that community members really did enjoy these pieces. Also in 2021, that Make Frisco group also did another ice exhibit, but that time in the historic park, just to keep that going. So that brings us to this point. So you've budgeted for 2022, $50,000. And public art is about really expressing the character of a community and the soul of a community. And that's a significant investment, $50,000. And this group, Make Frisco, we've seen their role evolve, but we've still seen they have a real interest in continuing to do community art projects. And they really have an interest in continuing to look for space to make and create art. But we're seeing more and more demand for commissioned pieces. And it's an evolution of the amount of funding as well. It is usual for a public art project, public art program, or arts and culture program to look to an arts commission. And it's likely that we've come to that point here in Frisco, where we would be looking for a group of people who are makers, people who have an interest in art, community members, business owners, who would look to sit on an arts commission and make recommendations, not just about the kind of art that we should commission as a town, but what should the strategic plan be around the type of how we would integrate art and culture and performing arts, visual arts into town, everywhere from roundabouts to murals to potentially events. And so because of that evolution of the group, possibly time to look at an arts commission. Lots of different options. Commissions can range from 9 to 7 people. In other communities, we see them holding aside a spot or a space for a high school student. In our case, because of how our community is, about 1.8 square miles, we might think about setting that space aside for someone who doesn't necessarily live or work in Frisco. And then everybody else, we might look at folks who do live and work in the community. Certainly a lot of different options. That group would need to come together fairly quickly to figure out what their mission is, what their vision is, and then some sort of strategic plan that would evolve out of that. And that brings me to the next part. Possibly 2 to 3 year terms, just depends on staggering. Of course, we wouldn't want everyone to leave the commission all at once. And then also Make Frisco. What happens with that group? Make Frisco, there are members of that group who are very much so interested still in those original goals and not so interested in being part of a formal arts commission. That's completely understandable. Some people are more doers and some people are more meters. And that group, a lot of them have a lot of folks who are doers. A commission would have an ability to have advisory committees like Make Frisco, but also ad hoc committees if they needed them on a temporary basis. So that brings me to, how do we figure out what we want to do going forward? And that would be looking at a strategic arts and culture plan. Possibly 5 years. Most of what we were able to find was about 5 years worth of planning and renewing it every 5 years. In Silverthorne, we have a great example of a plan that was very actionable. They have some great stuff in that plan. Even how they did the outreach was typically through art projects. The Candy Chang When I Die piece they did there. And they actually involved people in arts projects that were very accessible to even come up with that plan and figure out what their community wanted. We're not Silverthorne. We're not Breckenridge. We're Frisco. And we need our own plan. While I think there's certainly monetary and fiscal benefit to staff doing a plan like this, I think there is bigger benefit to a third party doing it and really having the expertise and being a neutral body that would figure out and really solicit a lot of robust feedback from the community. So this would of course be through an RFP process, again, a very robust outreach into the community. And it's our roadmap to where we want to go. And whether or not it's going to be about visual and or performing arts and really what the community wants. I promise brevity. There you go. So really 3 questions. 1, is there support for an arts commission? And what should that art commission really look like? 2, is there support for a strategic plan? How would you like staff to go about getting that strategic plan? We recommend that it would be a third party and that one of the first things that an arts commission would do is to take on planning and facilitating that. And then the third thing would just be around that Make Frisco group. We recommend keeping the Make Frisco group, inviting those group members to apply for the commission, but then making sure that they can still pursue the goals that they originally set in January 2020. Thank you.
I appreciate that.
That's pretty good. 10 minutes.
Any questions specifically? Let's just take away the questions in the staff recommendation. On the commission side, is there support to go that direction and form the commission? 7 folks was in the recommendation. Great. Head nods.
I just wanted to put a clarification. The charter would require that commission be created by an ordinance that lays out powers and its duties and the qualifications. The discussion tonight will be interesting and useful. Ultimately, all those details would have to be prepared in the form of an ordinance and the commission created.
Great.
About an hour before the meeting, I ran into Dan, his friend of mine, and his mother is Anne, who's 99 years old. And I said, Dan, what are you doing? And he was staring at a sculpture. He owns a building on East Main. And he was like, oh, I was, checking the sculpture, making sure it was, everything's good. He's like, come here, I want to show you something. And he didn't know we were talking about this tonight, had no idea. And he brought me over to 2 sculptures, and they were commissioned by the Frisco Arts Council in, let's see, the first one says in 92. So that's the one on East Main, kind of across from Stork and Bear. That's the one he was staring at. And the second one is the Nordic Skiers. And that was commissioned in 1997. And so I just wanted to go even farther back. That we're not the first ones to think of this. And I want to honor the people that did this previously, including Anne McCreary, and the others that are on those signs. So I just thought that was super cool. And, it's just such a great time to bring this back. And what we heard last spring from the Insights Collective, I thought was really wonderful. And I think all of us realized the role that the arts play in sort of solidifying our character in our community. And so it's just such a great thing for us. This is the happy stuff. So yeah, I just wanted to say that. Thank you, Vanessa.
Yep, there are 11 pieces of art in town already,
Exactly. Yeah.
right?
That seems like support for the commission. How about the going out for RFP for a 5-year strategic plan?
Can I,
Yeah, please.
can I jump
Yeah,
in and
yeah,
just,
you've been a part of
talk
this.
anyway?
Yeah.
yeah, this is obviously, near and dear to my personal agenda and plan for our town. And this is all part of a grown-up town. All of what's being proposed is what we're missing. And, we've already, we're not going to recreate, we shouldn't recreate the wheel for any of this. This has all been done, maybe not within town, but obviously Melissa worked on the strategic plan in Silverthorne. And, we have good direction. Yes, I agree, it should be a third party for such. But yeah, I'm in support of all of it. We keep it all going. We keep trying to fund a war chest for art, because as these medians and all come forward, and we come up with major projects where we end up having the ability to spend a lot more money than we've allotted, that's going to be coming down the pike, whether or not we choose to spend that money. So I think we will choose to spend that money and hope. And, so I support all of these issues. And, we've kind of got the commission basically laid out there, Vanessa, thank you. Just as far as the expectations of, how many meetings and whatnot, we might be able to define more of, what would come out of each thing might help. But yeah, and then make Frisco more of the community art thing. I think very important to keep going and keep engaging with. And, that's going to be the stuff that touches people and really helps enhance our community and the visitors that are coming to take part. And so I think we should keep supporting that. Make Frisco does not and will not require a lot of fundage, really, ever, I believe, because we're just going to keep doing things, and it's going to be recycling and all kinds of stuff where it's just not going to require a lot of funding. So let's keep funding art. Thanks.
Yeah.
Follow up, just segue. And to me, Andy, that really resonates because I think this is, as you talk about town's evolution, but this is why the kind of economic driver, I think, reflects our values and attracts the kind of people, either as residents or visitors, that really we seek, that really, as visitors, make our town even that much more interesting. And as we create the space for and populate those spaces with interesting programs and activities and things that represent our values, there's, and again, this is coming, this is the shot of the barbecue channel. So, but we can spend less on jamborees that actually have, that reflect less of our values and are, again, to me, are more contrived because they're not inherently organic to us and our culture. So I really like this kind of stuff, and I really like it, in an economic driver space. And it continues to reinforce our movement, the inertia that we need to maintain in that direction. And I think it will, as we create live-in workspaces we talked about, historic campus. We talked about maybe an artist residence campus. These are the kind of things that we pursue with that kind of money because it has enduring value. And it really, I get excited thinking about it, and I get excited knowing that we really can move towards those kind of places and spaces, and that it reinforces our brand. I love it. I love the idea. I love the letter that we got from Elizabeth. It really kind of challenges us in a lot of ways to say, what is the spectrum of art that we want to support? And I think that does go to the spaces and places and the ways, the opportunities that we create. And it really cements the kind of that is an enduring attribute for our community. So I look forward to supporting it much more so.
I agree, but I have a few more things to say. No, first, I think it's this is what grown-up towns do. They have a coordinated body that facilitates art. I think we can move past, we have $50,000 to spend on art, and that's what we're going to do, and make it, art is part of every conversation. If we're building a new building at Granite, there is no conversation of art there. If we're doing medians, so it's not, I think, chicken or the egg issue of how are we treating the arts as part of every conversation, as opposed to how do we spend this money that we've thrown in the budget. So a little broader detailing. I don't know our high school crowd. We inherently have an issue of putting high schoolers on here because they're going to leave in the end of their senior year. We're going to assume that. But we do have those banners on Main Street celebrating our graduates. So I would really like to have, we know there's going to be high turnover of the high schooler. I don't see a need to find somebody outside our town. If we have a year where we don't have a high schooler who wants to sit on the commission, then we don't have a high schooler. But why we would bring in a Breck or a Silverthorne or an out of town high school art focused person, I don't get. And the last thing is, I'm not sure I'm understanding, again, chicken or the egg. Do we bring on a consultant now or form the commission and let them drive the consultant? I'm a little consultant fatigued, to be honest with you. We have trouble crossing the street without hiring a consultant to tell us whether we should do it on 4th Street or 5th Street Avenue. So I'm just consultant fatigued, and would like to see the commission come together and let that group, give them a little more autonomy than us directing them from the start of who's going to be guiding their conversation.
Perhaps the high school student, or even people outside of Frisco, perhaps it's not outside of Frisco, but it is Wyborg Park and Bill's Ranch and the regional.
I think that's what we think of Frisco is.
Yeah, the footprint
Yep.
of, what
Right.
occupies our space.
Yeah.
Because that includes twice as many people as our voters in Frisco.
Yep.
And, so we, together we'd be able to pull from that group of experience as well. And they're part of our town. They just don't, since they're not annexed, they're not actually part of our town, so, but that's not Breckenridge.
I agree.
Right? Yeah.
No, at some point we should, do we have a name for the people who say they live in Frisco, even though they're not within our?
Unincorporated Summit County.
Okay,
Can
no,
we
no,
do that then?
no. If
Can
you drew a
we do
line,
that?
or if you drew a
Can you
line
have
around,
someone from outside the community be a member of a commission or board? Yes, absolutely.
just for terminology of Frisco proper, or Frisco and the suburb, Frisco and suburbs.
Can I just?
Yeah.
On the chicken or the egg thing, I would say absolutely, let's, as soon as we can, get the ball rolling on the commission. However, I'd also think we should get the ball rolling on a strategic plan, because the strategic plan tiers off of the vision of our comprehensive plan, of our community, of our council, of our Make Frisco members. It's not, I think that the commission almost in a way as the planning commission follows the lead of our planning guiding documents and code, the commission needs to respond and implement the strategic plan. And so I would say, I did want to mention, so you all know this, but I just want to remind you, Vanessa and I gave a presentation at the APA conference, and kudos to Vanessa. She did an extremely wonderful job. And we presented with Brett Create and with Silverthorne, and we're the infants. I think Silverthorne was the toddler, and Brett Create was kind of the adolescent, maybe college student early, but anyway, we're on a continuum, right? And the thing that my biggest takeaway from that was we need a plan. Oh my gosh. And one of the biggest challenges that we faced with Make Frisco, it was not for lack of enthusiasm at all, but we just didn't have a plan. And it's not really a plan-minded group either. It doesn't really function that way. But for a commission, I think that for this really to come together, we do need a strategic plan. And so I agree, we're consultant fatigued, but I don't see any way for staff. I don't think that this is absolutely a third-party exercise to come in and round up all of these ideas. I mean, it's an undertaking. It's not something that a staff person can, we would be doing ourselves, we wouldn't be paying it the credit that it deserves, because you don't have the time to do that. So I would say I would like to see them run simultaneously and play off of one another. And I think in the long term, the commission absolutely will inform that plan, and it'll evolve. But at this very first stage, we need a plan that our whole community is really a part of at this point, and ourselves, we're a part of. So I'm not ready to hand it off to a commission quite yet, if that makes sense. So
So you're advocating for a facilitator in a process or a public process, community process that has several stages and events
Yeah.
that's facilitated by a consultant team? Is
Yeah,
that- So you're on just trying to bracket this.
Yeah, so, I
conversation.
mean,
And then
it's-
the commission comes out of that process a little bit.
Is that's where we're doing our outreach to actually get commission members.
exactly. And so,
Oh, I see.
Yep.
That actually-
so it kind of all converges, but I mean, there obviously are experts in this field that write strategic plans for the arts. And I think that's the caliber that we need. We need somebody that knows how to do this, basically. And then the commission would, we can get the ball, we can start gathering interest tomorrow, but it's gonna take some time for it to really come together. That would just be my feedback on that.
I like the way those kind of proceed and help foster each other to the end point of the plan, with the commission kind of coming out of those conversations and the meetings. And
RFP comes first.
Mhm,
That's kind of how that,
mhm,
or you-
Yeah.
do we agree?
mhm.
I'm fine with that.
You're creating a solid foundation upon which the commission is built. I think gives it some framework, starts with
Well,
organizational.
number one in the strategic plan, form an arts commission.
Yeah.
Like that's
That's
like
fair.
the,
Yeah.
right? My only thought, and I'm sitting here glancing at Silverthorns as we're talking about it, just trying to understand what goes into a strategic plan for arts. I'm thinking, does it mean that you come away with a list of projects? No, it's much broader than that. But one thing I think that Silverthorns might be missing that I would like to see is the net benefit, not just from an economic perspective, but from a mental health perspective and a community engagement perspective. Like, how can we measure the net benefit of community art, whether it's performing or visual or any of that? What are the ancillary benefits beyond just the economic piece? And I would love to see that kind of fleshed out in a strategic plan. But otherwise, everything that everybody said, I totally agree with. So.
And I just think because Dan kind of went there, and Andy also said it in the funding side, but I think, when we revisit the promenade and bring that back, we could maybe sell those banners so they don't get stolen to help then fund in an auction kind of thing. So I think there's a good tie-in when the promenade comes back and how we can further this art project. So think that sounds good, right, Dan? Isn't that what you were hinting at a little bit? Did I miss, did I hear?
I love the way you take that. It's really what I'm trying to say, but just can't articulate.
Great.
All we need to do now is bring up hockey and we got it covered.
We got the whole, yep, that's next. That's after dinner. So, yep, that's after dinner. So,
Promenade during the winter, just cover it with ice and then we'd skate.
Yeah.
You could have me. You could have me there.
that enough for you, Vanessa, and the
Sorry, I've interrupted.
no, that's good. All three of those, it seems like we've got great support in the direction of kind of that, get the plan going, and then the commission will build from there. Thank you.
Thanks, Vanessa.
Thank you.
Great. That is it for the work session. Sweet. Dinner looks like it might be out there, and reconvene at 7. Thank you guys. That was a good conversation.
Good, nice.
Microphone volume scared me a little bit.
It
I
did.
was like,
No way.
Hallelujah.
Wow. To do.
Hallelujah.
I put a level 2 EV charger in the converter. And rolling
All right,
again.
thank
Talking
you.
to someone today.
Good evening, everyone. It is a little after 7 o'clock. Sorry about the technology issue and starting late. I'd like to welcome everybody to the regular meeting of the Frisco Town Council. Can you call the roll, please?
Mortensen,
Here.
Aronson.
Here.
Burley. Fallon. Held. Incan.
Here.
Sherburne. Thank you.
On this evening's agenda is public comment. Anyone wishing to make a public comment can do so now. Please be topic specific for anything that is not on this evening's agenda and have your comments last no longer than 3 minutes. If you are joining us online, you can raise your hand.
I'm not seeing anybody with a hand raised.
No hand raised and no one in the audience. So we'll close public comment and to mayor and council comments. Yeah.
I'd like to wish our town manager a happy birthday.
Yeah, happy birthday, Tony.
That's why all 7 of us showed up tonight.
Wow, good, thank you.
I guess I can, unless Don is gonna do it at some point, but the Soul Smart photo that we just took, it's an organization that evaluates our town code and sees how friendly we are to encouraging solar. And so that designation was, we were basically audited by Soul Smart, and then we're awarded the Soul Smart Silver because we are a solar friendly community. So congratulations to staff for going through that effort, and yay us.
Yeah.
Come do solar in Frisco.
More solar in Frisco. Anyone else? Yeah, Rick, go ahead, please.
On the vein of yay us. Congratulations to all the hard work of staff and everyone here in Frisco for the multitude of Best of Summit awards that we won. And on that same note, I wanted to just talk about, just mention to the gang here of the Best of Summit shows a lot of the hard work that the folks here working in Frisco are doing. And I wanted to caveat that into, I think it's time to revisit the police department remodel. Just to bring that forward for everybody. So thanks.
Take that. It was alluded to, but I just want to say is kind of a special night that this is the first time this entire council has sat in chambers together since the last election, which is a pretty amazing thing to think about. So I'm happy to have everyone here. And also just want to thank and recognize that the cones are all gone for the most part, and CDOT and SEMA have wrapped up the major part of construction on the GAP project, and it was a difficult summer, but they did a great job. They were very good partners in making that as little impact as possible, and I think we've got a good start, and I'm glad we've got more sidewalks and more of our trails are built because of it. So thanks to all who helped with that, especially Public Works and everyone else in CDOT and the partnerships there. So anyone else? Tony, are there any staff updates?
No.
Great.
Refer to the update report.
Next is the consent agenda.
The approval of the consent agenda.
Been moved to approve by Mayor Pro Tem Burley. Is there a second?
Second.
Seconded by Councilmember Aronson. Any discussion on the motion? Call the question, please.
Aronson,
Yes.
Burley. Fallon. Held.
Yes.
Incan.
Yes.
Sherburne. Mortensen.
Yes.
Thank you.
Thank you. Next is new business, and this is agenda item number 1, and this is a federal advocacy discussion. I'll open up the public hearing, and I see that Mara has joined us online. Good evening, Mara, and the floor is yours.
Thank you. Can you hear me?
Yes.
Great. Thank you. Great to see you all. We have been working really closely with Tony to identify funding opportunities through grants and existing legislation for the town's priority areas. Tony he had given us a detailed memo, and we put together a more comprehensive memo sort of outlining that. You all should have that if he hasn't shared it with you already. We're happy to make sure that you all have copies of it. We're also working to help identify grant writers that we'll work really closely with and advise while assisting with the best ways to submit. And we are also looking at a trip for council members to DC. Unfortunately, right now, still meetings are not taking place in person, especially on the Hill and with the White House. So we're monitoring that pretty closely. We are tentatively looking at March as a target for those first meetings. But we will keep watching and talking to our colleagues out in DC and making sure that we know when the best time to be will happen. And so we'll know probably better in late January, the status of that. And we'll stay in close contact, of course, with you all on it. We're hoping now, of course, that children who are ages 5 to 11 will be vaccinated with booster approval for 18 and older, that the COVID numbers will come down, especially over the next couple of months. So we are keeping our eyes on 2022 for you all for a great trip to DC and meeting with some administration folks, as well as some other key folks that will be helpful with funding opportunities. So with that, I open it up for any questions, anything I can answer.
Mara, any questions for Mara?
Sure, I got a question.
Yeah, go for it. Andrew.
Thanks, if I may. Thank you, Mara.
Sure.
I have a few things, so for me, this seems to be a personal priority for what we've got, because I see this as the opportunity of bringing in new money, right? So Mara, this is really where we're going to rely on you as far as, you've got a good comprehensive list of all the money that's coming down the pike at some point. Do you get everything you need from, say, Tony, as far as what's pointed to how and what we're asking for? Or do we need to, break down our ask to particular projects and, or, what do you need from us, and, or are you already getting what you need for the next steps?
Yeah, thank you. Actually, Tony has been an incredible partner thus far, and I know we're just getting started and digging in. So we are working very closely with him. If we have any questions, of course, we'll reach out. Right now, we've been trying to identify the right buckets for those priority issues that you all have identified for us. We have been looking at the infrastructure package. We're looking at the Build Back Better reconciliation. We're getting early drafts of those. And so we're able to kind of dig in. I expect this document to really be a working document that we will continue to update and share with you on a regular basis. Additionally, if we do, as I mentioned, have questions, we will be happy to come to Tony with them. He's incredibly responsive, and it's been a great partnership. We're really looking forward to continuing our efforts going forward.
That's great. Would you be able to just give us, say we go into this and our ask ends up at whatever, $20 million. We're just going to throw something out there, right?
Okay.
$10 million, whatever. I mean, for a small municipality like us, what can we hope for 10% of our ask? Can we hope for more? Is it, is that not even, I just have no idea. And I would like to know what we should, be expecting.
I mean, I think I would tell you, and I think Tony would agree, because he and I have spoken about this, at length. These initial meetings are going to be to get you on people's radar. We're going to continue to do that behind the scenes for you as well. But as far as digging in, I mean, to have an expectation of having millions of dollars out of the gate is an expectation you should not have. We are going to work really hard to make sure that we do get you funds. And what that looks like is kind of hard to tell at this point. I mean, we still don't even have the Build Back Better voted on. They just voted on the infrastructure package. It did send over to Tony what that means for Colorado. We have that broken down from our friends in the White House. Specifically for Colorado, there's a fact sheet that was just sent out yesterday. So we shared that. So you're getting real-time information as we're getting it, and that's being shared. And as far as, at this point, to tell you should expect 10% or 5% is, I mean, I'd love to look at my crystal ball and be able to tell you how much, but at this point, I honestly don't know. I can tell you we'll put our best foot forward. And, in especially these initial first meetings, it will be to put you on the key people's radar at the agencies that we will be tapping into for sure.
Sure. Okay. I think that's it. Thanks.
Other questions? Else for Mara? Mara, I just know, and looking at the housing side of the American Rescue Plan and being on Senator Bennett's roundtable for housing, I think as you're having these conversations, even starting now without us involved, and I know kind of the behind the scenes work that you do and why we've kind of retained you, is a lot of these plans don't meet the needs that the mountain communities in Colorado, like Frisco, are feeling. So a lot of it's around bigger projects and more Section 8 things, or around homeless and the transition from the homeless side. So anything we can do to continue, and I know Senator Bennett and the panel I'm on, we're about to kind of release our recommended changes to some of this and how we can better address the mountain communities in the like Frisco. So if you can keep that in your mind, because a lot of these we'd be hard pressed to find a way to qualify for anything in the American Rescue Plan under housing. And so I think that's just an area where I think between your knowledge and your connections, we can find ways to find something or broaden that conversation to kind of let people realize that our problem is real, is the housing problem in Denver, or the homeless problem in Denver as well. So I just look forward to those conversations. They've been good to be on, that I've been a part of now. And I think working with you guys will be as well pretty helpful in that direction. So thank you.
Yeah, thank you. Absolutely. We'll keep that on our radar as well. And if you can continue to keep me looped in on what you all are working on. I mean, we work with Senator Bennett's office and Senator Hickenlooper's office pretty much on a daily basis. So, staying looped in on those things are definitely will continue to make sure that we're doing going forward. But if there's ways that you can make sure to communicate back with me and let me know, that's always incredibly helpful.
Will do.
Thank you.
Yep. Other comments, questions, concerns for Mara? Is there anyone wishing to make public comment this evening on the conversation that you've heard?
I don't see anything.
Seeing no public comment, and I think unless there's no other questions for Mara, I think Mara, we appreciate it, and we're looking forward to conversations and seeing what we can do and where we end up. So thank you.
Thank you. Thank you all.
Appreciate it. Next item is under new business, is agenda item number 2, and this is the Meadow Creek ice discussion and direction. I'll open up to public hearing, turn it over to staff, and Diane, you kicking this one off? Tony, who's?
Nope, I am, Mr. Mayor.
Oh, hey, Jeff, I wasn't staring right in front of me.
That's
All
all
right, Jeff.
right, sir.
Welcome. Good evening,
I'm
sir.
good, sir. How are you?
Doing great. Thanks for being here.
Good. Thank you, council and mayor, for the opportunity to discuss this with you tonight. As you know, we've been working in Public Works and in conjunction with Tony and Councilmember Fallon to determine what we can do to make the ice experience out at Meadow Creek Park better. I believe we've come up with a plan that is before you tonight. It's all in the memo that I had written. So, I'm basically in light of not going through the whole memo, I just would like to open this up for discussion and take any questions you have or any concerns, and we can move forward on this project if you like.
Great. Thank you, Jeff. Questions, concerns? I'll kick it off on just the one question, and I think maybe just background would be helpful, is the to tarp in the gazebo and what other potential problems that creates in creating maybe a place for somebody to then inhabit most of the evening and the day, because it's a sheltered, warmer place. Are we worried about that? Was that addressed in the conversations?
Yes, Mr. Mayor, that was addressed, and it's not an enclosure, a complete enclosure of the gazebo. What we're thinking at Public Works is the end of the gazebo that faces the street would remain open, and the end of the gazebo that faces the pond would remain open. So it would just be the sides to kind of block off the wind and give a comfortable place for people to put their skates on and get ready to go out on the ice. So it would not be a fully enclosed nor heated thing at all. It would just kind of be more of a wind block than anything else.
Okay, great. That's what I needed. Thank you. Other questions, concerns? Otherwise, I'm in favor of giving this a whirl and seeing how it goes. I think it could be I hope we don't end up with anything in the drink that's happened in the past in other towns around ours, but I think it's worth a shot and worth the investment.
Are we able to do the ATV, UTV type vehicle, as you mentioned, all electric?
We could certainly look into that, Councilmember Burley, Mayor Pro Tem, but we have not looked into that, but we certainly can. I think that would present some challenges with the shed that we want to put out there for storage of this equipment. And we would have to get electrical service to that shed, which might be a challenge to do this year, but it could certainly be looked at in the future.
Jeff, I want to, thanks for, meeting out there and taking the time to really start to put together an operational plan to really improve this amenity. And I look forward to really seeing how the delivery of, a much higher quality surface, how it drives interest in this activity. And it's a great opportunity to highlight Meadow Creek Park during the winter, demonstrate how this kind of activity and this kind of investment can really help animate an underused area. So as a pilot program, for how this could really be applied maybe to the marina or whatever other location some future council decides. I think this is great, and I appreciate your participation, the dedication of the public works staff. I know they've worked hard over the years to get out there when they can and keep it functional. But I think this level of commitment is going to really show the promise of this. And I look forward to seeing the kids out there and families. I wouldn't mind seeing maybe another table in here, another, outside of the gazebo, maybe another picnic table. There's going to be better ice is going to engender more use. And I would expect to see more pressure in the parking lot, people walking. I think the obvious place for overflow parking is down at the transfer center. I would think people will park there and walk down. Hopefully there won't be problems with parking along the street. But we'll see how we go. We'll see if there's demand for example, something that's not in here would be a rental skate program and a partner for rental skates. Whether it be Pioneer Sports or Recycle Sports, a place where people can go and get skates for a couple hours. I think if there's some pressure there, you might start to get some people who might be interested in a cafe truck or something like that, something to cater. So from hot beverages and things of that nature. And again, all the kind of things that show the promise of scalability somewhere else in terms of how it can be, a really great high profile community amenity somewhere else. But that being said, it also, I think, regardless of whether we develop another aspect of this somewhere else in town, it really is going to benefit Meadow Creek Park. And it's something that we could continue to invest in on an enduring basis down there, because it just really makes up, hopefully, a pleasant destination park for the wintertime. So I'm looking forward to it. And I'm looking forward to participating in the maintenance, actually, if you guys need some help. And our ice crew from our little Walter Byron Park episode would love to be involved, and we're looking forward to skating. So thanks. I'm really curious to see what those dasher boards end up looking like and what the maintenance of those boards on the ice is going to be. I'm looking forward to the ATV machine and the blower, keeping the perimeter of that ice somewhat static and keeping the snow off the ice so that ice deformation and some of the water backflow onto that ice hopefully is mitigated to some degree. I know this is going to be really an experiment in outdoor ice management out there. So I appreciate your participation and your commitment to it, and you and your team. And I think it's just going to be a fabulous amenity that really will occupy a little bit higher profile and, in people's experience here across town. So it'll be easier to send people out there to have some fun, knowing that it's a little bit safer. And but with more use comes a little bit more conflict. So we just need to be prepared for that, I think, to some degree in terms of user conflict. But let's take it as it comes. I think this is a great place to start.
Thanks, Dan.
Yeah.
Seems like we've got support to go in this direction. Is there anyone wishing to make public comment on the conversation they've just heard? Oh, Jeff, did you have another comment?
Yeah, I just wanted to interject real quick, and I don't mean to be a wet towel, but there are three challenges. There are three challenges that we're going to be up against that I want to make sure you're aware of. Number one challenge with this is going to be finding the seasonal person and hiring the seasonal person that we need to be able to dedicate the time to this project. Public Works will be able to dedicate some time, but we're currently 4 people short on staff, and we do still have to plow snow and remove snow from town. So that's the first challenge. So I really hope there's somebody out there that would be very interested in this. I think it'd be a great position for somebody to come on board and basically this be their job for 20, 30 hours a week. The other challenge, as we see right now, is going to be the weather. It's mid-November already, and the ice is probably couldn't hold a small dog on it right now. So that's going to be the other issue, is when the ice will be at least 4 inches so that we can get out there on foot with snow blowers and things like that to start clearing the ice. And then the last challenge is going to be, of course, ice fishermen. That's something that we're going to really have to work through and figure it out and see if we can give an area somewhere off to the side that is safe for ice fishing so they can be allowed to do that, so that they won't be inclined to go right out in the middle of the rink and drill a hole out there like they have in the past. So I just want to make sure that we all are understanding those are the 3 biggest challenges. Other than that, I think everything else is completely doable. And the only other question that I ask is this something that you want to invest in this year in this year's budget? As in my memo, we'll have to do some switching around, but there is money budgeted starting January 1st for this process. That's the other direction that I would need from council this evening. Thank you.
We're all understanding of all of those concerns and issues for sure. And I'd be in support of trying to, if we can find it and move some things around, being prepared to get this going early. So we don't, I think starting in January will be more work and more money wasted versus trying to get that started going right away. Be my direction.
Yeah.
Let's go.
All right. Yeah.
Game on.
Okay.
And
Okay.
Now I'll see if there's anyone wishing to make public comment. No one in the audience. It's all staff online. Seeing no public comment, I'll close public comment. And then thanks for doing this, Jeff, and thanks for the work. And hopefully everybody who's listening in tonight, because I know there's probably lots. Well, somebody will want to be a part-time ice rink maintenance person to join your team. So thank you.
All right, we'll get it done. Thank you, Mayor and Council.
Next up on the agenda is an executive session. It's executive session pursuant to CRS 24-6-402, parentheses 4, parentheses F, personnel matters concerning the town manager performance review. I've entertained a motion to enter into executive session.
Mayor, I move that we enter into executive session pursuant to CRS 24-6-402, parentheses 4, parentheses F, personnel matters concerning the town manager performance review.
Been moved to enter executive session by Mayor Pro Tem Burley. Is there a second? Who's that?
I'm sorry, who was the second?
Seconded from Councilmember Rankin. Is there any discussion on the motion? Call the question, please.
Certainly. Burley.
Yes.
Fallon. Held.
Yes.
Incan.
Yes.
Sherburne. Mortensen.
Yes.
Aronson.
Yes.
Thank you. And I will be stopping this video and starting another one. Please give me one moment.
Problem.